Auth if they want to. So that's why we also have to do the login schema check here in the providers. So in the providers, go ahead and add the credentials. Open an object inside of here, and let's write an asynchronous function, authorize, like that. And it's going to give us the credentials in the props. So inside of here, I want to go ahead and validate the fields again. So const validated fields are going to be login schema dot save parse credentials like this. And then if validated fields are a success, in that case, let's go ahead and let's destructure the email and the password from validated fields dot data like that. And then what I want to do is I want to check if the email which was passed in the credentials provider is actually connected to any, user in my database. So I know that I can, check the password. So const user is going to be await get user by email from data user. I'm going to change this to the @ sign and pass in the email. And then I'm going to check if there is no user, or if there is a user, but there is no user.password. In that case, I'm just going to break this function. So how can it happen that the user has no password? Well, it can happen if they logged in using Google or GitHub. So if they create an account using Google and GitHub, and then they come around and try to use the credentials provider, we are not going to allow that because they don't have a password. And in order for credential provider to work, we need to compare the hashed password inside of our database with the password that the user just passed. So if this passes, that means, okay, this user registered using their name, email, and password. So what I have to do next is check if the passwords match like this. So let's write await, and we have to import bcrypt here. So let's import bcrypt from bcrypt.js or bcrypt. I found in my development process that bcrypt.js has less errors because I actually had an error when I used bcrypt, but you can try it out if you want to. But I believe that I also use bcrypt.js inside of my register action. So just confirm that you use it in the same place. So in the register, I use bcrypt.js, and in the auth config, I use bcrypt.js. And just confirm that in your package JSON, you have bcrypt installed, bcrypt.js installed, and also the types for bcrypt.js in dev dependencies. All right, so now that we have that, what we can do is await bcrypt.compare, and we're going to compare first the password which the user just entered, and then the hash from our database using user.password, because remember, that is a hash. So this way we are confirming that they entered the correct password without us knowing what the actual password is, because we're just comparing the hash. We have no idea what is the actual password of the user. Perfect. And if passwords match, return the user like that. And then go outside of this if function here and return null by default. There we go. So what we have to do now is we have to go inside of the auth.ts, and the same way we can export sign in, we can also export, the same way we can export auth, we can export sign in and sign out. And this can be used in server components or server actions. That cool, yes. So now let's go ahead and do the following. Let's go inside of our actions and let's go inside of login.ts. So this is the place where we have to call that login function. So first thing I want to do is remove this return here, and instead let's use the validated fields.data and let's destructure the email and the password like that. And then let's go ahead and let's attempt to log in. So I'm going to go ahead and import sign in using @/auth. So make sure that you added an export for that here. And then I'm going to wrap that inside of a try and catch block. So I'm just going to do this. And all we have to do in the try block is await sign in, give it the type of sign in, which in our case is credentials here, and go ahead and give it an email and a password. And let's go ahead and write redirect to be default login redirect from auth routes, from /routes, like this. So this will be the settings page, like this. So later, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a callback URL or that. So that's why I'm manually defining this here. So we don't have this yet, but later when we implement the callback functionality, we're gonna add that here. So that's why we need this field. Usually, I believe this is still gonna work if you just don't add a redirect to. But if you have a redirect to and the callback URL is null, then it will not redirect, so it's just gonna be weird. Right? So that's why I'm adding redirect to default login redirect. And it's explicit, so I like it. It's like telling me, all right, when you log in, this is where you will be redirected to. So I don't have to think, you know, okay, I have to think about my middleware now, and I have to think, okay, so once they get logged in, this is what will fire, and then that will redirect me to here, right? Technically, I just know that because we just wrote it, but in here, it's more explicit, so I like it this way. And then in here, we have to check if error is the instance of auth error. Is it auth error? Auth error. I'm just not sure where we can import this. So I think that we can import auth error from next auth. There we go. So import auth error from next auth. So if the error is an instance of auth error, we can open a switch case on the error.type here. And if the case is, let me just see, is it the case? Yeah, without the colon. So if the case is, let's see, why is it not auto-completing? There we go. So you can see we have a bunch of different cases that you can cover, but I'm just going to focus on the credential sign in here. So if this is the case, I'm going to return an object with an error, invalid credentials, like this. Let's give it a default case to return an error of something went wrong. Like that. And what's important when using sign in inside of server actions is that inside of the catch function, at the end of this if clause, you also throw the error back. Otherwise, it will not redirect you. So make sure you add throw error. They do this also in the official Next.js course. So I'm not sure if this is a bug or a behavior, but yeah, you have to throw an error. Otherwise, it will not redirect you to the login redirect, which in our case is the settings page. So first, I want to test the invalid credentials one out. So I believe that this is technically already working, but let's just try it out. So I'm going to write a random email here and a random password. And now I believe I should get an error, invalid credentials. There we go. It says invalid credentials. So if you remember your email and your password, you can enter it. I believe I have an email, newmail.com or newexample.com. And my password was 123456. And I think, there we go. You can see that this redirects me to the settings page. So it means that I'm officially logged in, and you can see my session here, because remember in the settings page, if I go inside of app protected settings, in here you can see that we await auth and JSON stringify the session, meaning that I am logged in. And now if I go and try and go to the landing page, I can still see this because this is a public route. But if I click sign in, you can see that I'm redirected to the settings page. That's because of that part inside of our middleware file. So inside of, where is it? Middleware right here. If it is the auth route, and if we are logged in, we redirect the user back to the settings like that. So we handled so many cases with our middleware. I really like how we did this. What we have to do now is we have to add a logout button so that we can actually clear our cache and stuff, right? So inside there's going to be very simple. So make sure that inside of your auth.ts you added an export for sign out, and then inside of your app folder protected settings page.tsx, go ahead and add a form here and add a little button which will just say sign out. Give it a type of submit, and give this an action to be an arrow function. Make sure it's an asynchronous arrow function. Add and use server here and simply call await sign out from @/auth. As simple as this. So this is how you can use the sign out function in server components. Yes, you can also use that inside of client components, but not by importing from here. So this is exclusively for server components, server actions and stuff, and basically all side server things. But don't worry, later I'm going to show you how you can also sign out and sign in using completely client components. So no need for server actions at all. Great, so I believe that if I click sign out here, I should be redirected to the Auth page. And there we go. And if I try and go manually to /settings again, I'm redirected back to the settings page. Great, we officially implemented login. Let's go ahead and create a new account here. So I'm gonna call this test@mail.com, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, create an account. Great, let's go ahead and here, let's use test@mail.com, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That should give me invalid credentials. And if I remove one, that should log me back in. There we go. You can see my exact information here. Perfect. So what I want us to learn next is how to extend this session object with a couple of more stuff, right? Because name and email is not enough. We also need the ID. We also need the role. We need a bunch of more things inside of our session. And thankfully, NextOut has callbacks which can do that. So that's what we're going to learn in the next module. This was a very long chapter, but I hope it cleared up some doubts that you had in the middleware and how all of that stuff works. So great job, and see you in the next chapter. So what I want to do now is find a way so that we can extend this session of the currently logged in user. So let's go ahead and just confirm one more time that this is working. So I will sign out, I will refresh, I will try to go to /settings manually. I'm redirected back here. And if I go ahead and add new example.com, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think that's my login and password. I might be doing something wrong. No, this is the correct one. Great. So we can go ahead and explore the following items. So inside of our auth.ts file here, we don't have a lot of things set up besides the adapter and the session. But in here, we can do something called callbacks. So above the adapter, go ahead and add the callbacks like this. It's going to be an object and add a comma at the end. And in here, we can define different types of callbacks. So we can visit the Auth.js documentation to learn a bit more about callbacks. So this is located in the guides, basics, callbacks right here if you want to read some yourself. So as you can see here, callbacks are asynchronous functions which we can use to control what happens when a specific action is performed. And here are a couple of them. So we have the sign in callback, which can be used to decide whether we are going to allow the user to sign in or not. So even if they successfully create an account, we can still completely block them from ever signing up inside of our account. And this function is way more powerful than doing that logic in, for example, our actions login, right? So in here, I can technically do the same thing. If email is some user, I can block them from signing in, right? But if you write that inside of a callback, then it doesn't matter what method someone is using to log in, whether they use an API endpoint or our server action. NextOut is never going to allow them to log in if we write that inside of our callback here. So that's one example. Next, we have the redirect. So we are not going to mess around with the redirect. It works fine from default. And I believe you can read more about the redirect callback right here. So it's called anytime the user is redirected to a callback URL, for example, on sign in or on sign out. By default, only URLs on the same URL on the site are allowed. And we can use the redirect callback if we ever want to customize that behavior. So this is how it looks on default, right? So if we ever want to modify it, this is where we can do that. In our case, this works perfectly fine, and I believe in most applications as well, so we're not going to play around with the redirect callback too much. And now we have the two important callbacks, JWT and the session callback. So the session callback is actually what returns our session, which if you remember inside of our app folder, when we created protected settings page, we use that right here. So that's the session that comes from this callback session. This return session is what we get right here. And as I've just mentioned, we have to find a way to extend this session because this is not enough information to us for us to work with. But before we can extend the session, we have to extend the JWT, which returns our token, because the session uses the token to actually generate the session. So let's go ahead and explore that a bit. So I'm going to go ahead inside of my auth.ts file. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and modify my JWT callback. So for that, you can write asynchronous JWT and go ahead and extract the token from the props here. And in order to get rid of the error, you always have to return the token at the end like this. And then what I want to do is console log the token like that. And you can wrap it inside of an object if you want to find it easier in the terminal log. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare my terminal here and make sure that you are logged in, right? And you can see how when I refresh here, this is my token. So the name is new, the email is new@example.com, my picture is null, and this is interesting. This is my sub, which is actually my user ID. So this is exactly what I can find inside of my database. So you can either go to NeonDB and look at your tables, or here's another way you can look at your database if you're using Prisma. You can run npx Prisma Studio, and that's going to launch it at localhost 55555. So in here, if I go inside of the user model here, I'm going to go ahead and see a couple of users that I've created. And there we go. Take a look at this ID, CLQ081. And if I take a look at inside of my other terminal here, there we go, CLQ081 right here. So this is a matching ID of our user. Great, so we already have the ID inside of here. And here are some other information inside, but this is not enough. This is not everything that we need. But token is not the only thing you can extend from this JWT session right here. If you hover over here, you're going to see everything that you can extend. You can extend token, the user, account, profile, trigger, is new user, and session. So you can go ahead and play around. For example, let's go ahead and log the user. Let's see what that's going to look like. So if I go inside of my terminal here, yeah, and I don't know exactly how the user is filled. I believe that this might only be not undefined the moment you log in, right? So I don't think that this user field is too reliable to use. And I think the same thing is true for the profile. For example, I don't think we even have profile for this one. There we go. You can see how it's undefined, right? But if I bring it back to the token, you can see the token is much more reliable when we have a logged in user. So for that case, we're going to use the sub from the token to actually load our user from the database inside of this callback. And then we're going to pass more information to the final session, right? So first we have to go ahead and use this token. Specifically, we have to use token.sub and pass that to the session callback. So for now, let's leave this as it is, right? Actually, you can leave the console log so that you can follow the flow of information going on. So this is the callback that we have. Now let's go ahead and add another one. So asynchronous session, which can extract the user. Besides the user, it can also extract, sorry, not the user, token and session. Those are the props it has. And the same as in the token, you always have to return the session for this to work. And inside of here, we can console log the token, but I'm going to write it as session token so we know the difference. All right, this is the session token. So let's go ahead and look at our terminal here. And there we go. You can see that now I have the session token, which is identical to the token from our callback below. So here's what we can do now. If inside of this token, I decide to do this, token.custom field is equal test, like this, And if I go inside of my terminal, there we go. You can see that that is now passed inside of session token, right? So it's both available in the original token. This is the token callback, but it's also available in the session token. So this is my custom field test. And then what I can do, so let's do some another thing here. So I'm going to write session token to be token, and I'm going to write session, well, to just be session, right? So now we can keep track of both of those. There we go. So now I have the session that user is name, email, image, null, right? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write session.user dot, and let's write custom field again to be, well, we can actually transfer it from here, right? So we can now use this token.custom field like this. And let's just go ahead and write if session.user, just so we don't have the error accidentally. Like this. And now, I believe if I refresh here, there we go. On the settings page, you can see how now I have name, email, image, and here is my custom field, fully working inside of my server component. So I think this already gives you an idea of how we can transfer the ID from the token inside of this user session, right? So if you want to, of course, you can always write something you want here. So it doesn't matter. You don't even have to use the token to extend the session. If you want to, you can use it completely like this. So you can see how now the custom field is anything. But here's what I want to do. What we want to achieve is we want to get the ID for the current user, which we've just established that inside of the token or session token is sub. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to remove this console log. I'm going to remove this token. So I'm just going to return the token in the JVT callback. And then inside of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write if we have token.sub and if we have session.user, in that case, session.user.id is going to be token.sub, like this. So as easy as that. And let's take a look now. There we go. We officially have the ID inside of our session. So now every single place where we use the session, be that a server component or a client component, we can always have access to the ID of our user. But this was quite easy, right? Because we already had the ID inside of token here. But what about a completely custom field, right? What if we want to add a new field inside of our schema, for example? Well, we actually do need some new fields, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go inside of schema, schema.prisma right here, go inside of the user here, and after the password, let's go ahead and let's add a role for our user. And let's make this a type of user role, which we don't have. We're going to create it in a second. And let's give it a default value of user, like that. So in here above, I'm going to write enum user role, and I'm going to give it a type of admin or a type of user, like this. There we go. So now we have a enum of user roles which are available for a user model. So make sure that you save this file, give it a default value of user. And now what we have to do, well, first I recommend that you shut down your app completely and then run npx prisma generate. So this will add it inside of our node modules. And I think it's best that we clear up our entire database. A, because I want to teach you how to do that, and B, because I don't want to have any old fields which don't have the user role. So before we do that, let's actually do this. Let's do npm run dev and let's just sign out. Since we're going to remove some users, I think it's better that we don't mess with the cookies. So let's go ahead and sign out. Of course, I believe this isn't a problem for Nextout. I'm pretty sure they can handle deleted users, but just for development, I don't want you to have any problems while you're doing this. So make sure that you are signed out, make sure that you've updated your schema Prisma, and now let's run npx prisma migrate reset. So what this is going to do is going to reset the entire database. So it's going to give you a question to confirm that, so all data will be lost. Of course, only do this in development, don't do this in production. And now that the database reset was successful, we have to run npx prisma database push. So every time that you reset your database, you have to run npx prisma database push. And after this has been done, let's go ahead and do npm run dev like this. And let's go ahead and refresh the login page here. And if you want to, you can also either keep open the Neon database or NPX Prisma Studio. So one of the two, just so you have an overview of your application. So my users are completely empty, as you can see here. So if I go back here, I will not be able to log in because I don't have any account. So I'm going to create a test account here with the password 123456. I'm going to create this account, and this should add a new user inside of my database. There we go. We have a new user with an encrypted password, and there we go. We have a default role for our user, and you can see how it has an enum so that I can change it to only one of the two here. And now if I go ahead and log in with this user, so test at example.com 123456, you're going to see that I'm logged in with this user right here. Great. So what my goal is now is to extend the session so that I can actually have access to this role user right here. So how can I do that? Well, we can do that quite easily. We have to go back inside of our Auth file right here, and we have to focus on the token session. So we first have to pass this to the token. The reason I want to pass that to the token, because we can get access to the token inside of our middleware from the request right here. And then it's going to be useful for us to know whether someone is an admin or not inside of the middleware, because then we can write something like is admin route. And then we're going to write the same logic. If is admin route, and if you are not an admin, redirect the user back. So we can create role-based access, right? Role-based access control using the middleware and the token extension. So here's what I want to do. I want to go ahead and I want to import get user by ID from data user. So just make sure that you have get user by ID. It's very simple. So it's very similar to our get user by email. Of course, you can use the get user by email as well, but keep in mind that that's going to be a very expensive query because ID is a primary key. So obviously the query is going to be much faster for that. So now inside of this token here, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and fetch my user. So I'm going to write the following. First, if I don't have token.sub, that means that I'm logged out. So I'm just going to return the token, right? No need to do anything here. Then I'm going to go ahead and write const existing user to be await get user by ID to be token.sub. Then I'm going to write if there is no existing user, I'm going to go ahead and return the token again. And finally, we can go ahead and assign the role to the token. So token.role is going to be existing user.role like this. And let's go ahead and console log the token inside of our session now. So I'm going to write session token to be token here. And if I go inside of my terminal here, inside of my original npm run dev, there we go. You can see that my session token now has a role of user. Great. So what I can do now is the following. I can do if token.role and session.user session.user.role is gonna be token.role. And for now, just ignore this TypeScript error. But let's take a look at our app now. If I extend this, there we go. After my ID, you can see that I can find a role of user inside of my session. So that's how we can extend the session inside of Nextout. It's actually not that complicated. You just have to know the flow. So first it starts with the token, right? In the token, we already have the ID, which is stored in the sub field. And then what we have to do if we want to get more information is get the user from our database. Apparently, you can also use the extracts from user and profile, but honestly, they are always undefined for me. So I'm not exactly sure how we are supposed to use them. If I learn, of course, I'll make a video about that. But for now, I completely rely on something like this, right? And this is also why we had to separate our Auth and our Auth config, because in these callbacks we're using Prisma, which is not working on the edge. So if we had callbacks which were defined in Auth config, then that will be going through the middleware, and then it will break the app because it's not supported on the edge. But I believe that inside of Auth config, we can freely use Prisma inside of providers like credentials, because this doesn't run on the edge. This is simply run once the user tries to sign in. So I think that's why this is working completely fine here. Great, so now that we know how to extend the role, let's go ahead and explore how to modify the TypeScript or the types for the session and for the token. So in order to add the TypeScript to this user inside of our session, there actually is a guide for it. So let me go ahead and expand the screen so you can find that. So it is in Getting Started TypeScript session right here, and you can scroll down here to the adapters, and in here you're gonna have module augmentation right here, and they're gonna teach you how to extend the existing session user and add a specific field that you want. But here's the thing, this actually does not work for me, but we're gonna try it out, and then I'm gonna show you a solution that I use which works for me. But still, I'm gonna give it another shot. Maybe I missed something. So they are doing this inside of auth.ts. So we're gonna try that as well. We're gonna write our declaration here at the top, and we're gonna try to fix this error of our role not existing in this user field, because by default it doesn't exist here. So let's go ahead and do the following. So let's add this import from next out, importing the next out and the type default session. Let's go ahead and try that out. So we already have this actually, so we can just add a comma and import the default session like that. And then we have to go ahead and declare a module auth core like this. So let's go ahead and declare this module. So I'm gonna do that here. I'm gonna close this. Then we have to create an interface session. We have to get the user, and then we have to extend it before we write anything inside using the default session and specifically get the user like this. And then this is where we would add our role, for example, to be admin or guest, or sorry, user, right? But as you can see, it's clearly not working for me. So even if I add it as a string or something, it's not working, right? So it simply does not exist on type user. No matter how many times I declare this module, this is not working for me. So even if I reload my window, there we go, it's still not working. So at first I thought, okay, maybe it's because I'm declaring this inside of this file. So let's try the alternative thing. Let's try this. I'm going to close this and I'm going to create a new file in the root of my application, next-auth.d.ts. Maybe I have to declare it here, for example. So I'm going to copy this here and I'm going to paste it inside of next-auth.ts right here. And in here, let's import next-auth and let's import type default session from next-auth. And I thought, okay, maybe that will work. So if I remove it from here and if I remove this import now, but as you can clearly see, it's still not working for me. So I don't know if this is maybe a part of the migration process or maybe they missed something, but this is simply in no way working for me. So this is what I'm gonna do next. I'm gonna do the following. Instead of extending auth core, I'm gonna be extending next auth. So this is what I'm gonna do now. First, I'm gonna write our extended user. So export type extended user is gonna be default session user, and in here I'm gonna go ahead and write role to be admin or user like this. And then inside of here I'm gonna write session user to simply be extended user like this. And I'm going to change this declare module to go directly to next-auth like this. So now looks like it's still not working, but if I go ahead and reload this, I think that maybe then it will work. And okay, as you can see now it can recognize it, but now we have a problem that the token.role doesn't match what we just defined inside of here to be admin or user, right? So what you can do is you can kind of explore even further how you can modify the token, but I really didn't manage to do that, especially in the next-auth version 5. I could do it in the old versions, but it's no longer working for new versions. So what you can simply do is as admin or user, for example, and there we go. Now you can see that it's working, and you can see that user.role is the correct one. Obviously, it's not a really clean solution, right? But I think it works good enough. But if you want to, we can try and extend the token as well. So they obviously have instructions for how to extend the token, but I believe it's still not going to work. But let's try it out. So I'm gonna go and remove this as admin user, right? So let's keep this in an error and let's attempt to resolve this. So we have to import JVT from Auth core JVT, and we have to declare the module Auth core JVT like this. And in here, I should just go ahead and add a role to be optional and add it to be as admin or as user like this. So now if I refresh this, for example, so I'm pressing Command, Shift, and P to open this little command here, and I do reload window. It's the same thing as shutting down your Visual Studio Code and bringing it back up, but it's faster. As you can see, this is not working for me. Token.role is just an empty object for me. So I don't really know. Perhaps we can try maybe extending next out slash JVT. Maybe that will be better, and maybe we can import JVT from next out JVT. Does that have the JVT alias? It does. Token.role, no. If I reload my window, I think it's still not working. Yeah, you can see that no matter what I do, this used to work in the previous versions, but now it's no longer working. But, you know, at least we know how to extend the session. Of course, this might change in the future. They might fix this. So that's why I want to show you this guide where they have clearly defined instructions on how to do this, right? But at least, you know, these are just types, right? I know it sounds weird, just types, but yeah, you can technically, if you exactly know what you're getting here, you can write stuff like as, you know, you can actually import user role from Prisma client directly. So user role from Prisma client like this, and that's the equivalent of admin or user, right? So you can use that here, but I actually don't recommend importing that here because I think you're going to lose your auto import for the user role. So you can try it like user role from Prisma client. And I believe that if I like remove this here, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe I just made it up. So I'm just going to write as string for now. I'm going to refresh my window. And I think if I try to import user role, oh, it's working. Okay, then maybe you can add it there as well. Yeah, do that. Replace the admin and user with user role from Prisma client. My apologies. I looks like in my development process, I got some bugs doing that, but looks like that was just in my session. So we can now import user role from Prisma client in the auth.ts file, and we can use the token role to be expected as user role. And because we extended the session user with the extended user, which has a role property of user role, there are absolutely no errors inside of our application here. And now we can freely, well, nothing has changed here, right? We were just working with the types now. So it's not really important from the functionality of the project, but it does make our development experience much better now. Perfect. And if I go ahead and go inside of my app folder, protected settings, page.tsx right here, let me just try and do session.user. And I think that you can see how it gives you the types of user and their role. So I can safely have an autocomplete for the role here and an autocomplete for the ID here, right? So that's what's important for our development experience. That's why we care about TypeScript working, because by extending this, it's one thing to just have it accessible and visible here, but it's another thing to have type safety so that we know that we are working with that information. Also, one more thing, in previous versions, user.id was not defined. Now it seems to always exist. So usually you had to do the same thing in the extended user. You also had to add an ID to be a type of string. But now it looks like you don't have to do that anymore. But if you, for any reason, have an error, it's just as easy as adding it here. So id.string, right? And whatever other fields in the future you might have, right? So if you can add a complete custom field here, and if you go ahead and write session.user. There we go. You have the custom field autocomplete, and you can assign anything you want here. For example, if I go ahead and visit my code now, you should see the custom field to be anything here There we go. So I hope you kind of learned how we can manipulate callbacks in JVT and session now. So just remove that assignment of a custom field and go back instead of next out and remove the custom field from the extended user. We were just doing that to practice. Great. And here's another thing I quickly want to show you while we are already here. So I'm going to go ahead and sign out now. And if I go inside of my Prisma Studio, you will notice that I have a field email verified to be null. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attempt to block myself from signing in. So let's go to the top here, above the session, and let's write asynchronous sign in. And in here, we can destructure the user. And by default, let's return true. So we allow the users to sign in. And in here, let's go ahead and see what this user is made of. So I'm going to write const database, or actually, let's call it existing user to be await, get user by ID to be user.id, like this. And then I'm going to write if there is no existing user, or if there is no existing user dot email verified, in that case return false. So this way, if the logged in user is not inside of our database for any reason, if that might happen, or if we don't have verified email, we are not going to allow the user to log in. So let's try that out. So while looking in my database, if I try to log in with this user which doesn't have their email verified, it should not be allowed to log in. So if I try test at example.com 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right here, I should not be able to sign in. Let's take a look, and there we go. Something went wrong. Perfect. So we just finished that. Of course, I'm going to remove this for now. We're not going to need it. We're going to come back to this sign in. I just feel like it's easier for us to work with when we are allowed to sign in, so we can fully see our active session and everything regarding that. Great. So I think we did a good job going over all the important aspects of callbacks. I hope you learned what they do and what they are used for. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and enable GitHub and Google sign in, and then we're going to go ahead and create some email verification. Great job. So now let's go ahead and let's set up our Auth providers, Google and GitHub. So if you're logged in, go ahead and log out so you can see the login screen right here. And the first thing I want you to go through is to localhost 3000/API/Auth/providers. And right now, the only thing that you should see is the credential providers, because that's the only thing that we have inside of our Auth config. Right here, we have the providers, and the only thing we use is credentials, as you can clearly see right here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and import GitHub from nextout/providers/GitHub. And we're going to go ahead and use this and add it just above the providers here. So once I save this and refresh this page, there we go. Now I have my GitHub provider here. And we can do the same thing for Google. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this one. Let's import from Google and let's rename this to Google. And then we can just as easily add Google at the top here. And then when you refresh this page again, there we go. Now we have Google, GitHub, and credentials. Great. So what we have to do now is we have to obtain some environment keys. So first, let's do them for GitHub and let's define them inside of these providers here. So open an object and define the client ID to be process.environment.github_client_id, and then client secret to be process.environment.github_client_secret, like that. And then copy this first variable and immediately add it to your .environment file, like this, GitHub client ID. And then do the same thing for GitHub client secret. So just paste it here. Now let's go ahead and obtain those. So you have to go to GitHub and go inside of your profile right here on your settings. So you can click in the sidebar here and find the settings here, like this. Then scroll all the way down and go to developer settings. And in here, go inside of Auth apps. Go ahead and click create new Auth app and give your application a name. So this is going to be Auth tutorial for me. And then let's give our homepage URL. So that for me is http localhost 3000 like this, without the slash at the end. So just leave it at 3000 to be the last thing. And now we have to find our authorization callback URL. So we can easily find that inside of this API auth providers. We have the callback URL written right here, localhost 3000 / API auth callback GitHub. So let's go ahead and copy this. And let's go ahead and paste it here and just remove the annotations. Make sure you have no annotations at the beginning or at the end of your application. And go ahead and click register application like this. And there we go. You can now obtain your client ID. So let's go ahead and assign the client ID like this. And now we have to get our GitHub client secret. So let's go ahead and click on generate a new client secret. And there we go. You should now be seeing your GitHub client secret here. So copy this and let's paste it here. There we go. GitHub client secret and GitHub client ID. Perfect. So now let's do the same thing, but for Google. So go back inside of auth config, expand this object right here and assign the client ID to be process.environment.google_client ID and client secret to be process.environment.google_client_secret as well. Like that. Great. And now we have to obtain both of those. So let's add them to our environment files. So GitHub client ID and Google client ID and Google client secret. So in order to obtain those, go ahead and Google API console and click on the link which goes console.cloud.google.com. And that will open up a console similar to this. So in here, first step is to create a new project. So click on this navbar at the top and click new project. Let's give this a name of Auth tutorial and let's click create right here. And now just wait a second for this to be created. Once it's been created, go ahead and click select project and ensure that in your navbar, your new project is selected. And now go ahead and click the search and search for APIs and services. So this one, APIs and services like this, and click on this one. So it opens the actual page for that. And in here, first let's define OAuth consent screen like this. And go ahead and select the external user type. So anyone with a Google account can test out the authentication. Give your app a name, so Auth tutorial. And go ahead and select your user support email, which should autocomplete from your current account. You can skip the app logo and app domain, and you can also skip authorized domains. So we're going to add this after we deploy, because right now we cannot add localhost here. And go ahead and add a contact developer information email address here, and click save and continue. And once you've done that, scroll down and just click save and continue. So no need to add any special scopes here. And no need to add any test users, just save and continue. And there we go. You're going to see your entire thing right here. And now let's go and click inside of credentials here. And let's go ahead and click create credentials. And let's go ahead and create OAuth client ID. So inside of here, select the application type to be a web application. You can leave the name as it is. And now we have to add authorized JavaScript origins and authorized redirect URIs. So let's go ahead and write HTTP localhost 3000 for this one. And for the authorized redirect URLs, we have to use the one defined in here, callback URL. So just copy this one. Go back to this and paste it here, and of course remove the annotations like that. And make sure you don't add a slash at the end here or a slash at the end here. So make sure it ends with Google like that, and go ahead and click create. And there we go. You now have the client ID, so we can copy this. So Google client ID, and we also have the client secret. So copy the client secret as well. And let's paste it here. There we go. So we have everything we need now. So what I want to do now is go ahead inside of our app folder, components, Auth, social right here. And now we have to implement the sign-in functionality from here as well. So you already know that there is a certain way we can sign in by using the auth.ts from where we export the sign in function, but we can only use this in server components or in server actions like we do here in the login. We import sign in and then we use it here and we specify credentials. So we can technically create a new server action which will simply call await sign in, and then in here it would be Google, right? We can do that. But I want to show you a different way of doing it. Just in case you were wondering, you can do it still completely inside of client components without server actions as you could before. So for that, let's go inside of components, Auth social right here. And the first thing I want to do is create this common onClick function here. So let's go ahead and write const onClick to accept a provider, which will either be Google or GitHub. And in here, let's go ahead and let's import sign in from next-auth/react. So that's what you have to import if you want to use it purely in a client component. So go ahead and select the pass in the provider param, and then instead of having a redirect URL, redirect to, as we have if we import it from Auth, which is used for server, right? In here, we have a callback URL. So let's define the default login redirect from @/routes to lead to there. And now let's go ahead and use this onClick here first for the Google button. So onClick and passing Google as the provider. And in here, pass in GitHub as the provider. And now let's go ahead and test out both. So here I have my Prisma Studio open. You can run it by running npx Prisma Studio. I only have one user in my database. And now let's go ahead back to our login page and let's go ahead and click on GitHub here. And there we go. You can see that it's asking me to authorize this website. And once I click authorize, I should be redirected and I should be logged in on my settings page. And there we go. And you can see that now I have some new fields. For example, my image is automatically filled with avatars from GitHub. I also have the email which is connected to my GitHub account, and I still have the role user, and I still have my ID here. And if I check my Prisma Studio and refresh my users, I have a new user here like this. And you can see that I also have a link with an account because this is an Auth sign in. So I have a proper relation with my account where more information is stored, like what is the provider, what is the access token, the token type, the scope, more things if you're interested in that. Great. So now let's go ahead and try this out with Google provider. But here's the thing. If you try and log in with the same with the same email that you just used for GitHub, you're going to get an error. So if possible, try and choose a different email just to test this out. So something you don't have in your database. So make sure you try with a different email, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there we go. So I'm logged in with a different email here, and there we go. Now I have an image from Google, right? And I also have the role user, and I also have the ID. Perfect. And if I go ahead and refresh my Prisma Studio here, there we go. Now I have 3 users. So it's official, our Auth providers are now working. But here's what I want to do now. Email verification is only going to be needed for credential users because Google and GitHub already do email verification on their own, right? Google in itself needs to have 2-factor authentication to confirm that the user exists and phone number verification, and GitHub simply uses a verification email link. So there's no point in us doing that as well. That's the point of Auth providers, so that they offer users a seamless sign-in and they offer you security that it's not a spam email. So here's what I want to do. Go ahead and select these 2 users in your database which are logged in using GitHub or Google, and go ahead and delete those 2 records from your database. And that is automatically gonna delete the accounts as well. So if I go into account here, you will see that I have no rows once I remove those 2 users. And here's what we can do now. So we can go inside of auth.ts here. And besides callbacks, there is also something called events in Next-Auth. So let's take a look at what the documentation says about events. So events are asynchronous functions that do not return a response. They are useful for audit logs or reporting or handling any other side effects, which is exactly what we need right now. So for example, we have an event sign in. So when a user signs in, if you add that to the event object inside of Auth, you can do whatever you want here, right? You can also check if it's a new user. So if you want to add a different field or something, you can do that. And that's going to be asynchronous, and it's going to be useful for audit logs, for example, if you want to add some logs here, or if you want to do some side effect. We are specifically interested in a link account. Why are we interested in this one? Well, if this event is ever triggered, that means that the user just used an OAuth provider to create or log in inside of their account. Also, you probably noticed that we don't need a special register for OAuth. So it's very simple. If it exists, it's gonna log in. Otherwise, it's gonna create a new account. So we don't need this will work equally. We reuse this component here. Right? It's exactly the same. We don't need a special login for using credentials. So where was I here? So we're going to use a link account so that whenever someone creates an account using Google or GitHub, we're going to automatically populate this field called email verified. Because again, there's no need for us to verify an email coming from an OAuth provider, right? I mean, except if you chose a really, shady OAuth provider, of course. But we are working with Google and GitHub here, so we can trust them completely. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So I want to go inside of auth.ts here, and let's go ahead and let's add events. And in here, I'm going to use the link account right here. And inside of link account, we can go ahead and extract the user, and let's also mark this as an asynchronous function. And in here, let's go ahead and simply do await database.user.update, where we have a matching ID of user ID, and the data we are going to update is the email verified field to be new date. So it's not a Boolean. It is a date field, so we know when an email was verified. So in the future, if we have some new rules for email verification, this is going to be very useful because we can simply query and find all users which have not verified their email in a long time. So it's better than a Boolean, which is true or false. That's it. That's all we have to do. And let me tell you what I was talking about. So in the model user, email verified is a date time, which is optional. Great. So confirm that you only have one user in your database, which should be the credential providers, email, name and password here with the email verified null. So now if I go ahead and use GitHub, for example, to log in, what should happen is a new account should be created. And besides that, if I go inside of my Prisma Studio here and refresh, this event link account, there we go, has immediately verified the email. We know that everything is fine with this account. No need to verify anything further here. Perfect. So that works just as we expected. But now we have to talk about this little error that we can get. So this is my current email, which I use for GitHub, right? So what happens if I go into my Google account and use the exact same email to log in? Let's try it out. Well, as you can see, I'm redirected to this weird page, which we've never seen before. And you can see that we have an error to confirm your identity, sign in with the same account you used originally. And in my URL, I have an error here. So how do we, first of all, how do we not show this page? So this is great. This comes auto-generated from, from Next Auth, but I want to use my own pages. I don't want to use this pages. It's great that they exist out of the box, for sure, but how about we use our own? Well, we can do that as well. What we have to do is we have to go inside of auth.ts here, and let's go ahead and do the following. Above events, add pages. And in here, first, let's define our sign-in route. So for us, that is /out/login. So now Next Auth is always going to redirect to this route when something goes wrong. And let's also add an error route to be /out/error. So if something else goes wrong, regardless login or just something breaks, I never want the users to see this page. I want them to see my nicely designed page instead. So you obviously know that we don't have this page, so we have to go ahead and create it. So it's going to be quite simple. Let's go ahead and go inside of app, Auth, create a new folder called error, and inside a new file, page.tsx. Let's go ahead and import the Auth error page or error page, it really doesn't matter. And actually not a div. What I want to return is an error card, which we don't have yet, but we're going to create it in a second here. So let's go ahead and create the error card by going inside of components Auth, create a new file, error-card.tsx. Let's go ahead and let's import the header from ./header or components Auth header. Let's import the back button from ./back button or components Auth back button. And let's finally import everything we need from components UI card. So that's the card, card footer, and card header, like this. And let's go ahead and export const error card here. And let's return a card. Whoops. Let's return a card with a class name of width 400 pixels, shadow medium. And let's add a card header here with a header component. And let's give it a label of oops, something went wrong. And a card footer with a back button component, which will simply have a label back to login and href of Auth login, like this. Great, and now let's go inside of the Auth error page and let's import the error card from components Auth error card. So now if you visit localhost 3000/auth/error, like this, looks like it automatically redirects us to here, and I believe that is because we have to add that inside of our routes.ts here. So we have to make that an Auth route. So let's go ahead, or even better, let's make it a public route. Actually, no, let's make it an Auth route. I think that makes more sense. Auth error, because it's only going to happen for logged out users. Yeah. So let's make this inside of Auth routes here. So now if you try and go there again, Auth error, you should see, oops, something went wrong like this. Perfect. And I just remembered that I could have probably used inside of my components Auth, where is it? Error card. I think I could have used the card wrapper. So let me just try it out. Card wrapper. Yeah, I think I could have used that. So I can just give it a header label of oops, something went wrong, like that. I can give it a back button href to Auth login and a back button label of back to login, like that. And in here, I can add a exclamation triangle icon from Radix UI icons and maybe wrap that in a div with a class name W full items center and a flex, maybe justify center. There we go. And give it a little class name of text destructive, like that. All right, that looks fine. And yeah, now we can remove all the imports besides card wrapper, and I'm just going to use components Auth, like that. So just a little bit of styling. Obviously, it doesn't actually matter for the tutorial itself. And we can go back to the login. Great. But let's go ahead and try this again. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Google login, and I'm going to select the same email that I already have inside of my database here. So what probably happened is that you didn't get redirected to the error page. Instead, you came back to the login page. Well, that's an improvement from what previously happened, which just redirected us to that weird page which we've never seen before. But here's the thing. if you take a look at our URL, we now have the error inside of our URL. So we can use that to display the error here instead. So the reason it didn't redirect us to that error page is because that's used for something else, right? But we have that covered as well. But let's go ahead and read from the URL now inside of the login form, and let's go ahead and show the error inside of our little form error box at the bottom. Let's go back inside of Auth form. So components Auth, login form right here. Oh, and we have some errors here. Okay. Well, we'll solve that in a second. First, let's go ahead and let's import use search params from next/navigation like this. Let's go ahead and let's get the search params. So const search params are use search params, and then let's get the URL error to be search params.get error. And now let's go ahead and compare it. So if it is our current error in the URL, so I'm going to copy it from here, which is Auth account not linked, or you can just simply see what I write here. So Auth account not linked, the capitalization also matters. So if that's the case, we're going to write email, or we can write please log in with, or you can just say email already in use with different provider. All right, something useful. Otherwise, an empty URL error. And then you can go ahead and use this URL error down here in the form error. So make sure that the error goes first and then pipe URL error. And there we go. Email already in use with different provider. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh this and clean the error from my login. So I'm going to try and log in again and see if it appears. And there we go. You can see how the error is being thrown now. And you can see that if I go ahead and continue something here, and now I have a new error, you can see how it replaces that error. So that's also something we want. We don't want that error to always be shown there. Great. So now let's go ahead and see why we are having these little errors here. So I believe we can just easily fix that by adding question marks here to the data like this. Success does not exist on property error. All right, let's go ahead and check that out. Why doesn't it exist? All right, if it doesn't exist, we probably didn't get around to doing that yet. Yeah, so it doesn't exist yet. We don't throw success anywhere. So for now, we can comment this out, and I will add to do add when we add email. Sorry, 2FA. Yeah, success is going to exist later when we add two-factor authentication. So in the login function, we're going to throw a success, meaning the two-factor code has been sent, right? So that's what we're going to use this for. But for now, no need for this. Great. So I don't know when we got that error. Sorry if I didn't catch it earlier. I hope it didn't cause you any problems. But yeah, you can just add a little question mark here. Great, so we just implemented Auth inside of our application. So just to wrap up this module, you might be asking yourself, well, should we really get an error for this? Like, I'm pretty sure I've seen some pages which are able to combine different Auth providers, like it's called automatic linking, right? Why don't we have that? Is it good to throw an error here? Well, you have an answer for that question inside of frequently asked questions. So in the concepts, frequently asked questions here, there is one called when I sign in with another account with the same email address, why are accounts not linked automatically? And in here you have an explanation of why they do that. So they are obviously thinking about that. And there obviously is a certain risk between doing that, especially with the amount of providers that they support. I believe that between Google and GitHub, there might be no issue, right? They're obviously very reliable providers, but not the same can be said for all of them, I guess. I believe there actually is a little key which you can add to manually link an account. I think it's called something like dangerous linking, and then you just enable that. But I would recommend you don't do that. Obviously, if they disabled it, they know something we don't. Great, so you just wrap that up. Great job. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go back to our register here, and we're going to implement the email verification for credential users, because we technically wrapped up email verification for Auth users. All right, so now let's go ahead and let's create the verification process for credential registration. So the first thing we have to do is we have to go inside of our Prisma schema, and we have to create a model which will be used to verify our credentials, right? So let's go below the account here, and let's create a new model called verification token, like this. Let's go ahead and give it an ID, which is a type of string. It is the default ID and the default value of CUID. And let's give it an email of string, and let's give it a token of string, and let's make sure that the token is unique. And let's give it an expires of date time. So we're gonna make sure that the verification email can expire, right? We don't want anyone else to abuse that. And let's add a unique rule for the combination of email and token. So only one unique token per specific email. Great, so now we have the verification token here, and there's no need to create a relation with the user. It can live on its own like this. And let's go ahead and push that where we need to push it. So what I recommend you do is that you shut down your app and run npx prisma generate, and then let's do npx prisma database push like this. So now you should have a new collection in your Neon database, and I believe you can also check that immediately here in npx prisma studio. So if I run this right here, and if I go inside of here, you should see a new collection verification token as I have right here. So everything is fine. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's create a couple of functions which we are going to use to create this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create my data lib for the verification token. So let's create a verification token here. .ts, so the same way we did like with user, and let's import the database from /lib database, and let's write export const get verification token by email to be an asynchronous function which accepts the token, which is a type of string, and inside we are simply gonna open a try and catch block. In the catch we're gonna return null. Otherwise, let's get the verification token by using await database.verification token.find unique. Let me see if I can expand this. There we go. Find unique, where we have a matching token like this, and then return the verification token. And my apologies, this one should be email, right? So this is get verification token by email. So we are not using the token to search. We are using the email to search. So where email like this. And in this case, it's not going to be find unique. It's going to be find first like this. So email, email like that. Great. And let's go ahead and copy and paste this. And let's name this one get verification token by token. And let's accept the token prop. And then here we can use find unique, and we can use the token query. There we go. So make sure you have get verification token by the token field and get verification token by email. In here we use find first and we query by email. So make sure you have both of those. Now that we have this, let's go ahead and create a lib which is going to be used to generate these tokens and make sure that, you know, if an existing token exists, it gets removed. So let's go inside of lib and create a new file called tokens.ts. So in here I'm going to keep all kinds of tokens which we are going to generate. But the first one is going to be export const generate verification token, which is going to be an asynchronous function which accepts the email. And then inside, let's go ahead and we have to generate the actual token. And for that, I'm going to use the UUID. So I ensure that it is always unique. And for that, we have to install npm install UUID like that. And let's see if we need the types for that. So if I import v4 as UUID from UUID, there we go. I need the types for that. So I need to run this command right here. So npm install --save-dev or just -D types /UUID. So we need that as well. And that should get rid of this TypeScript error. There we go. So import v4 from here. And now we can get our token by simply using, so let's import it as UUID v4 like this. UUID version 4. Great. Now let's go ahead and write const expires to be new date again, dot get time, plus 3600 times 1000, like that. So basically we're gonna expire the token in 1 hour, right? This is going to calculate the number of milliseconds in 1 hour. And this gets the current time. So we add 1 hour from now and we wrap all of that in a new date. So we have that. And now what we have to do is check if we have an existing token already sent for this email. In that case, let's go ahead and do const existing token to be await get verification token by email, because that's the only thing that we have at this point inside of this prop. So we're going to use the email one. Make sure that you have it in here. Make sure that you use find first and the email query here. And if we have existing token, in that case, we're going to go ahead and remove it from our database. So let's go ahead and import our database from add/lib/database. So in here, let's write await database.verification token.delete. And where is going to be ID of existing token.id. Like that. And now we can generate a new verification token. So const verification token is going to be await database.verification token.create. Like that, and data is going to be email, token, and expires. There we go. And now you can just go ahead and return the verification token like this. Perfect. So now we have to find a place where we're going to run this function, generate verification token. So the first place we have to send it, we have to use it, is inside of the registration itself, right? So let's go inside of actions, register right here, and we already have a little to do here. Great. So let's go ahead and let's import generate verification token from add/lib tokens right here. And then we're going to go here at the bottom once we create the user, and let's just do const verification token. So verification token is going to be await generate verification token, and we're going to pass in the email that the user is trying to create an account with, like that. And then we can change this message to be confirmation email sent. So obviously we're still not sending the email, but for now we're just going to have the verification token here. So let's go ahead and make sure that our app is running, and you can also prepare npx Prisma Studio in another terminal so that you can see when it gets added. So let's go ahead and check it out. So I'm going to refresh this right here. I'm going to pair my Prisma Studio here. And right now I have 0 verification tokens here. So nothing in my Prisma database. So I'm going to create new. Actually, this is my email, right? So this is verification test. It really doesn't matter what's the password. And all this is sent now is tell me that the confirmation email has been sent. And inside of my Prisma Studio, if I refresh this, I should have a new verification token. And there we go. You can see that we have the exact email which this verification token is used for, and we have the unique token using UUID, and we have the date when it expires. Perfect. So what we have to do now is actually send an email, but there is one place where I want to generate this token before we do that. And that is in the login, right? So this user should not be allowed to log in at the moment, right? If I use that email, which I have right here, and if I try and log in here, it's going to work, right? Well, first thing we have to do is we have to not allow the user to sign in if they still haven't still haven't set up their email verification. And otherwise, if they try, we need to send them a message like, hey, we sent you an email again here on the login form. So if they go away from the register form, they need a way to send that email again. And they can do that very simply by trying to log in. And we're just going to send them an email again. So let's go ahead and we're going to do the exact same thing here. So let's go inside of actions, login in here, and let's go ahead and import generate verification token from /lib tokens right here. And now what I want to do in here, when we get the email and the password, let's go ahead and let's try and get an existing user from our database. So I'm going to use await get user by email. So make sure that you import get user by email by data user. We already have that, and it's very simple. We also have the user ID. So in here, we're going to attempt to fetch the user that the current user is trying to log into with the email. And in here already, we can check if there is no user, or if there is no user.email, sorry, existing user, or if there is no existing user.email, or if there is no existing user.password, meaning that they shouldn't be logging in with their credentials. Instead, they should log in using Auth. In that case, we can return an error, invalid credentials. Or you can return something a bit more specific like invalid, I don't know what will tell the user. So it's either gonna be, user does not exist, or yeah, let's do that. Email does not exist. Let's do that. All right. And now let's go ahead and check if the user exists, but it doesn't have its email verified. So if exclamation point right here, user doesn't have the email verified, existing user, my apologies, existing user does not have the email verified. In that case, we're gonna generate a new verification token right here using await, generate the verification token, and pass in the user.email, existing user.email. So like this. And then we're going to return success, confirmation email sent. Right, so we're gonna break the function here, and we are not even gonna attempt to sign in. But remember, we are not done yet, because users can still use the API to log in inside of our app. So we have to protect them inside of the sign in callback. So we have to do that as well. But we're gonna do that in a moment. I just wanna test out that the new verification token is being generated if I'm trying to log in with a user that doesn't have their email verified, meaning that they just signed up for their account, or they waited longer than an hour, so the email that we sent them during the registration is no longer valid, so they need a new email. So one of those. So let's go ahead and try that out. But just before we try it out, I think we have to revisit our components Auth login form, because in here, I believe I commented Auth. Yeah, so I wrote 2FA. Yeah, it's actually already. So make sure that you add inside of the onSubmit function, inside of Auth components Auth login form, just bring back set success data dot success like this. Let's just confirm that we actually show the success message. We do. All right. So let's try it again. So this time I'm going to go ahead and log in again as this user. And I just want you to kind of pay attention to the current token, right? Kind of try and remember like the last few characters, because the only thing we're going to notice is that this token will be updated and the ID is going to change. So try to, keep an eye on that. So I'm going to try and log in now. And I should be blocked from logging in, and I should get a message, confirmation email sent. So if I refresh this, there we go. You can see how the token changed and the ID changed, meaning that we successfully created a new expiration. Well, we could have just looked at the expiration, yeah. We just created a new expiration for the token. Great. So we're almost there. We just have to do the same thing now inside of our auth.ts, because you already saw that sometimes auth can redirect to that special page which it generates by itself. So from there we don't protect anything, right? So that's why whatever you do in your login or register functions, you also have to do an equivalent inside of callbacks. Because what you do in the register and login actions or API routes, it doesn't matter. You're doing that, well, yeah, for security, but also for user experience. But for total security, you also need to do it inside of Nextout. So you need to have equivalent things inside of Nextout. I could have easily done this, inside of registration as well, but it's easier to do it in this way. Like I like to know that my auth is taking care of this. So when it comes to auth, you never want to be worried that you're missing out on something. And this is, the best way to do it right here. So let's go ahead and we have to create a callback called sign in. So I'm going to do this at the top here. So a synchronous function, sign in, like this, and inside we're going to destructure the user and the account. By default, let's return true, meaning we are allowing you to sign in. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to check and we're going to allow Auth without email verification. So the way we can do that is simply by checking if account .provider is not credentials. Make sure you don't misspell this. So credentials. In that case, simply return true. That's it. So if it's anything other than credentials, I'm going to allow this without email verification. Of course, when you start adding more providers in your code, you might have to adjust this. I'm not sure what kind of providers exist in Nextout. So if you might want to be more specific, for example, you can do the opposite thing. You can do if account.provider is credentials. And in that case, open the whole logic to check whether the email is verified or not. But I'm doing it this way. It's simpler for me, right? And inside of here, I'm going to attempt to get the existing user using await get user by ID, using user.id inside of here. And I'm going to simply check if not, so put an exclamation point, existing user !.email verified. In that case, return false. So very simple. If the user has not verified their email, I'm going to block them from logging in. That's it for now. And I'm going to add a to-do comment here, add to FA check. So we're going to have that later. Great. And if you want to, you can add a comment here, prevent sign in without email verification. Right. So as I said before, if you add more providers in your code, you have to check if this is still okay, because I don't know what kind of providers exist. So right now I'm only requiring email verification on the credential provider, right? And I'm not requiring it on Google or GitHub. So if you're using this, in production and you add some new provider, make a decision if you still want only the credentials to be checked for email verification. If not, you can go ahead and modify this logic to do the opposite. So you can do if account provider is equal to credentials. In that case, you can go ahead and do this thing, for example, something like that. But as I said, I know what is the structure of my app. I know which providers I use. So I want to allow everything to simply be able to log in, except if you're using the credentials, then I'm going to do a check on you to see if you have your email verified. So this is what should happen now. So go inside of your actions, log in right here. And for now, I'm going to comment this out. right? So I'm not going to generate a new token. So imagine that I didn't write this code where we block the user from our login function. So this is what's going to confirm to us. Now it should throw an error instead of this because we just modified that inside. There we go. You can see how it threw an error. That's exactly what we want. So even without this code in the login function, we have a fallback inside of Auth, which will never allow that kind of user to log in if they don't have their email verification. So that's why it's important to match the logic which you write inside of your, be that a server action or an API route, match that inside of callbacks as much as you can. It's gonna highly improve the security of your application. Great. So now that we have all those systems in place, and of course, make sure that in the login you actually bring this back, which if you commented it out with me. And what we have to do now is we have to set up our mail provider. So for that, I'm going to be using Resend because it's extremely simple to set up. It has a very generous free tier, and it will take us 5 minutes to do this for this tutorial. I'm going to give you some alternatives as well if you want to for any reason, but most of them are more expensive to start with and require a credit card or something. But Resend doesn't require anything. You can just start using it and you can finish the entire tutorial just by using Resend. All right, so let's go ahead and let's do that. So head to resend.com or use the email in the description and go ahead and create an account. If this is your first time, you're gonna get prompted to create a name. So I'm gonna call this Auth tutorial and create a team. And there we go. Now let's go through this onboarding. So first let's add an API key like that. Great. And what's great is you can already test whether it's working or not. So it should have the email you logged in with right here. You can see I created a new email just to test this out. And just go ahead and click send email. And if I check my inbox here, very quickly, it should appear. There we go. Can I hide this sidebar? I can't. Okay, there we go. Congrats on sending your first email from onboarding. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's go inside the docs right here. And let's use the Next.js quick start. And first they tell us to create an API key. So we already have that. So I'm keeping that right here. Don't close this tab yet. And now let's do npm install resend. So I'm going to copy this. Let's go inside of our terminal here. I will close the Prisma Studio and I'm going to run npm install resend like that. Let's see what is the next step. So we don't need any email templates here. I just want to see if, okay, so they use resend API key. So that's what I was looking for, the name for what to save this in. So let's go ahead inside of our environment variables after this has installed. And let's simply add the resend API key and copy the API key from your onboarding right here. There we go. Great. So now that we have the resend API key, I just kind of have to explain one thing about resend. So you can go ahead and find, the free tier. And if you're interested in that, I'm not sure where it is. Is it settings here? There we go. Yeah. So you have 3,000 free emails a month, 100 free emails a day in the free tier right here. Right. But right now you can only send emails to yourself, right? So to this email, which you can find in emails, you cannot send it to anyone else. Until you add your domain. So that's what you have to do. You have to add a DNS record to your domain. And no, you cannot use Vercel or Heroku or something like that. No, you need to own a domain. So good thing for tutorial, this is more than enough that you can send yourself emails. But if you want to share this with your friends or something and use allow these emails to be sent to everyone, the easiest one is to simply add a domain. I'm going to show you how to do this exactly in the end of the tutorial after we deploy, because this is for production only. You don't need to do this for development. Great. So just make sure that you have your API key here, right? If you cannot see it anymore, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. Let me just see, edit API key. Yeah. If you accidentally lose your key, you can always click create a new API key, right? And just give it full access of course. And then you can copy it again and just paste it inside of resend API key. Great. So what I want to create now is my mail library. So let's go ahead and let's go inside of lib, and in here create a file mail.ts like this. Let's import resend from resend, and let's define resend to be new resend, which uses the process.environment.resend_API_key, and confirm that it matches here. So resend API key, copy it from here, paste it here, make sure there is no typos. And now let's export const send verification email here to be an asynchronous function, which has the email, which is a string, and the token, which is a string, right? Or I'm just gonna collapse this like that. So we have the email and the token, and then inside of here, let's generate the reset link. The confirm link is gonna be HTTP localhost 3000/auth/new-verification. And then we're gonna add a question mark, and we're going to add a param for the token. So let me just zoom out so you can see this in one line. And we're gonna add that token at the end. So this is the important part. Well, everything is, but make sure it goes to /auth/new-verification. And make sure that you add a question mark and a param or a query token, and then stringify the token which we are passing from the props here. So this is the confirmation link, which we are gonna email to the user. And then we're gonna create this new verification page, and we're gonna use it to detect whether the token has expired, whether it exists, and if everything is okay, we are simply going to change the user's email verified status in the database to a new date. And of course, we're gonna have to change this later to something dynamic so it works in production. Otherwise, you know, your users are gonna get localhost emails, which won't make sense. But for now, this is good enough. And now what we have to do is send the email. And now you're gonna see how incredibly simple that is with resend. So just resend.emails.send from, and in here choose onboarding at resend.dev like this to email. Subject is gonna be confirm your email, and we're gonna have HTML, open backticks, and you can just write HTML here. So write a paragraph like this, and I'm gonna write click, open an anchor tag. I forgot how to write anchor tags. Okay, in here I'm gonna write here, and let's give this anchor tag an href to the confirm link. And in here, you can simply write to confirm email. There we go. That's it. That's all the code we need. So make sure that you have a little paragraph here, right, which starts here and ends here. Then open an anchor tag, which has an href, open annotations, and add a confirmation link here. And now let's go ahead and use this send verification email inside of actions, register here. Whoa, how did they get there? There we go. We have this to do right here. So let's go ahead and import that from our mail. So send verification email from @/lib/mail like this. And let's go ahead and remove the to do and use await send verification email. And we expect two arguments, email and then a token. So first let's pass in the email, and then actually we can do this. We can use it from the verification token to ensure that it's the one that's in the database. So let's use verification token.email and verification token.actual token. Now let's try that out. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna create a new account here. So I'm gonna call this verification at mail. Actually, yeah, we need to use the actual, you need to use your email. So make sure that you use the email where you can send the email address to. So for me, that's this one, tutorial mailing. It should be written right here below, or you can click on emails. So make sure you do it with this email, because no other emails will work until you add a domain, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this, copy right here. If you have an account already, just remove them from your database. So there we go, add an email that you can find here in resend. Let's go ahead and create an account, and now I should be actually sending an email. So let's see if that's working. Confirmation email sent, and there we go, confirm your email. And if I click here, it should redirect me back to login, because I'm not logged in and we didn't add this new route, which is the Auth new verification token. We did not add that to Auth routes, but it is officially working. Great. So now what I want to do is also send the verification email in the login page, in the login functionality. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to go inside of actions, login here. And now let's go ahead and import the same thing. So I'm going to import send verification email from /libmail. And in here, let's await send verification email. First argument is the email, and the second argument is the token itself, like that. So now, if I go ahead and log in using using my email here, which is tutorial mailing. All right. So I created an account, right? But I didn't verify my profile. So if I try to log in now, I should be blocked from logging in, and instead a new email should be sent. So let's try that out, and there we go. You can see how now I have two emails. This is the old one and this is the new one a minute ago. And I can go ahead and click here again. Perfect. So we can officially send emails in our app. Great. So I'm going to end the module here. In the next one, we're going to create that new verification screen where we're actually going to verify the email. For now, if you want to, if you have a domain and you know how to add a DNS record, you can do that right now. If not, wait till the end of the tutorial when we get to deployment, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Great job. All right, so now what we have to do is we have to create the actual confirmation page so that the user can click on this link from their email, and that's going to load and confirm the email here. But just before we go there, I feel like I didn't do a good job explaining inside of auth.ts here, we have this asynchronous callback sign in. And it seems like I kind of magically knew to look at this provider here and put the credentials. So what I want to do is I want to console log the user and the account here, so that we can actually see what's going on inside and how I knew that I have to look for credentials here, right? So we use the sign in callback to first allow any Auth logins, which is Google and GitHub, to log in freely. But otherwise, if it's not Auth, so if it is credentials, in that case, we search for the user, and first we check if they have their email verified, and then later we're also going to do two-factor authentication for credential users, because there's no need to do two-factor for Google and GitHub users, because Google and GitHub has their own two-factor authentication. So make sure that you add, or you don't have to, you can just look at the video. So I added the console log in the sign-in callback to see what we get from the user and the account here. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to log in using GitHub here. Let me just refresh this page to confirm everything is working. So I will try to log in with GitHub, and I'm going to see inside of my terminal if I have any useful information from that callback here. And there we go. You can see that I have logged my user. There we go. You can see my user information here, and you can also see the account information. And in here, you can see that the provider is GitHub. Like this, right? So I could have also used the type. Maybe that's even better, right? But as I said, there are many providers, and not all of them are exactly, reliable to not have their email verification. So now that we checked how this looks for Auth providers, let me sign out and let me try and log in with another user. So I'm going to go ahead and open my NPX Prisma Studio. Just to see what users I have inside of my account here. Do I have any user which is already registered? There we go. I have this test user, which has their email verified null, and it should not have any account relation. So I know that this is email username and password registration. And I think I know what is the, I think I know what's the password for this one. So I'm also going to go inside of actions, log in. And for now, I'm just going to comment out this code checking for email verification, just because I want this to fail, right? I want this to prevent us, and I want to see this console log here. So I'm going to prepare my terminal here. You don't have to do this, of course. I just want to go ahead and show you how this looks. So if I log in using this account, there we go. So I have an error here, but if I scroll up, there we go. So we have my user here with the email verified null, and I have an account, and you can see the type is credentials and provider is credentials as well. So you could have used the type or the provider inside of here. So we can now remove this console log. So we could have also done user account.type is not credentials. That would also work. So that's where I got the provider value from, if in case you were wondering about that. Great, so let me just revert this. So I want to make sure that this is now being sent here. Let me just go back inside of my code here. So I will just uncomment this out. So if I try this again, this should send an email. Well, it will not be able to send an email here because we have not set up a domain. Great, and one more thing I want to explain is the recent here. So I told you that you can only send emails to this email, which you logged in with, right? That is true until you add a domain. Once you add a domain, you can send emails to anyone. And you can also change where the emails come from. Because if you take a look at our mail service now, you can see that I have to specify that it's coming from onboarding@resend.dev. But once you add your domain, which we're going to do later when we do deployment, you will be able to modify this so it sends from, you know, for example, codewithantonia.com. It will be something like onboarding@codewithantonia.com, right? So no, you're not stuck with this email, don't worry. Great. So now what I want to do is I want to go inside of routes.ts, and what's happening right now is that if user tries to click on their confirmation email right here, they get redirected back to the login page. That's because they're trying to access a page called /out/new verification. So you might be thinking, all right, we have to add that to the Auth routes. And that could work, yes. But I also want to add this to public routes because remember, user will be able to change their email from their settings page. And if they are able to change their email from the settings page, that means that they are logged in. So the best place to put this route is inside of the public routes. So both logged in and logged out users can access this. So let's write /out/new-verification like this. And make sure inside of your mail.ts, inside of lib folder mail.ts, that you use that exact route. So /out/new verification. So it should match this exactly. And now if I try and go inside of my mail here and open this page, I should get a 404, which is a step towards, well, not being redirected. So now we have to actually build this page. So let's go ahead inside of the app folder Auth. Let's create a new folder, new verification, and inside create a page.tsx, and let's call it new verification page, and a div new verification. So once I save this, there we go. We no longer have an error, and if I try again from mail here, there we go. You can see how it redirects me to new verification, and inside of my URL, I have a matching token, which I can find in my database. Great. So now what we have to do is we have to build the new verification form. So new verification form like this. If I save, of course, I'm going to get an error because that does not exist. So let's go inside of components, Auth, and create a new file, new verification-form.tsx. Let's mark this as use client, and let's export const new verification form. And let's return a div new verification form. Then we can go back to page.tsx and we can import that from components Auth new verification form. And there we go. We no longer have any errors. And now we are free to develop directly in the new verification form. So first things first, let's go ahead and let's import card wrapper from /card wrapper or components auth card wrapper. And let's go ahead and replace this div with the card wrapper. And let's go ahead and give it a header label of confirming your verification. And let's give it a back button href of /out/login. And let's give it a back button label of back to login, like this. Great. And now what I want to do inside is add a div here with a class name of flex items center with full and justify center, like this. And inside, what we are going to do is we're going to add a little loader. So for that, we have to install a package called React Spinners. So I'm going to shut down my Prisma Studio and do npm install React Spinners, like this. So make sure you add this package, and then we can import any loader you like. So you can Google React Spinners to see what kind of spinners they all have, but I really like the one called beat loader here. So in here, you can now render the beat loader like this. And there we go. You can see how this is going to look like. So when a user clicks from their email here, it's going to start loading and automatically verifying this URL link using the token which we have inside of our URL. Just a quick tip, if you don't have the token inside of your URL, confirm inside of your lib mail in the send verification email that you have a token as the parameter, that you properly assign it to the URL, and then find where you use the send verification email. So we use it inside of login and register. So in here, ensure that your first parameter is the email, the second parameter is the token, and the same thing in the login function. The first parameter is the email and the second parameter is the token. Great. So let's go back to the new verification form, which we are working in. It is located in components auth new verification form here. What I want to do now is I want to import use search params from next navigation. And let's go ahead and add them here. So search params from use search params. Of course, make sure that you've marked this as use client so you can use hooks inside. And then let's get the token using search params.get token. So how do I know that I need to get the token exactly? Because of my URL. So you can see that this token value is stored inside of a token query right here. So that's how I can get my token. Great. So what we have to do now is we have to write an onSubmit function. And we're actually gonna wrap this inside of a use callback because we're gonna put it inside of a use effect. So let's go ahead and import use callback from React. And let's replace this onSubmit to use callback. Add an empty dependency array. And in here, for now, we can simply console log the token and add a token to the dependency array. Now let's import use effect from React. And let's call use effect here. And inside of use effect, we are simply going to call onSubmit once, like that. And now, if you go ahead and open your console log, you can see the token which is stored inside of my URL being logged here. And you're probably noticing that it's being logged 2 times. You don't have to worry about that. That is only because of, I believe it's called React strict mode, which in development calls every use effect twice. So in reality, in production, this is only going to be called once, right? And I believe we might even get some bug here because in this onSubmit, we're going to check if the token has expired. But once we confirm it the first time, it's going to be expired. So then when it triggers another time, we're going to get a little error here. But that's only going to happen in development, not in production. Because in development, React calls use effect twice. So I just want to bring that to your attention. So if you're seeing it twice, that's completely fine. I have that as well. Great. So now what we have to do is we have to actually create a functionality to call the verification. So we're going to call that new verification action. So let's go inside of actions and create a new file, new verification.ts. Let's go ahead and mark this as use server at the top here. And let's import the database from /lib database. Let's import get user by email from data user. And let's import get verification token, not by token, because, sorry, get verification token by token, like this, from data verification token. And I'm just noticing now that I have a little misspell here. So let me go ahead and quickly resolve that so you can check if you have that as well. So verification is spelled V-E-R-I-F-I, and I think inside of my data folder, I misspelled it, V-E-R-F-I. So I have to rename this to verification by adding a little I here. I just don't like typos in my code. And now I have to look throughout my project and see where I am misspelling it. So let's see, I believe this is just some cache. This should be completely fine. So when you rename your file, you have to go through all of your other files to see if they are still using it properly. So I'm going to search for get verification token here. All right, so I use it inside of verification token data. All right, I use it inside of tokens here. There we go. You can see how I have an error here because I renamed my import. So go inside of lib tokens. And in here, I have to rename this to be verification. There we go. So we resolved that. Let me refresh this page. All right, I think that's the only place where we have it. Get verification token is inside of tokens. And here where we are working in the new action. So actions, new verification. I have to rename this as well to verification token. There we go. So no more errors inside of my code. Great. So inside of here, let's export const new verification. Let's make it an asynchronous function, which simply accepts the token, which is a string. Let's get the existing token using await, get verification token by token and pass in the token. If there is no existing token in the database, we are going to return an error saying token does not exist, meaning there is no way we can verify your email. And now let's check if token has expired by using new date existing token dot expires, like that, is smaller than new date as of now. And if it has expired, in that case, let's go ahead and return an error, token has expired, like this. And then let's go ahead and find the user we are supposed to validate using this token. So await get user by email is going to be existing token dot email. If there is no existing user in our database connected to that email, that could mean that the user changed their email in the meantime somehow. So let's just return an error, user does not exist, or maybe more specifically, email does not exist in our database. And if all of those tests above have passed, we can finally do await database.user.update. And in here, let's use where ID is matching to existing user.id. And the data we are going to update is that email verified is new date. But also one more thing that we are going to update is the email to be existing token.email. So why am I doing this as well? Why do we need this update? Well, during the registration process, it is not needed, but we are going to reuse this new verification server action for whenever user wants to modify their email, right? So when we create the settings page and the user adds a new email, we are not going to immediately update their email in the database. We are simply going to create a token with that new email and send an email to that email. And then when they confirm it, we are going to update the email value inside of their database. So that's why we need to do this as well. So in registration process, this is going to be exactly the same as it was before. So that's why maybe this isn't making sense to you. But keep in mind that we're going to reuse that for when user wants to change their email, right? So that's why we have to update the email here as well. Great. And then finally, we can go ahead and remove the verification token. So verification token.delete, where ID is existing token.id. As simple as that. And let's return success, email verified. There we go. So we have our server action finished. Now we can go back inside of the new verification form, inside of our components Auth, new verification form right here. And let's go ahead and let's import that action. So import new verification from actions new verification here. And let's go ahead and call the new verification here on the onSubmit. So I'm going to do new verification, pass in the token, which we have inside of here, like that. And of course, we can go ahead and check here immediately if we have the token or not. So if we don't have the token, we can break the function immediately, like this. Well, that's actually not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to throw an error, right? So let's do that. So let's import use state here. And let's go ahead and let's define error to be set error from use state. And let's give it a value of string or undefined. And let's do the same thing for a success message. So set success, like that. So in here, if we don't have a token and we try to submit, we're simply going to do set error missing token. And we're going to break the function then, like that. And then inside of new verification, let's do .then and let's get the data. And in here, let's set success to be data.success. And let's set error to be data.error, like that. And let's also add one.catch in case something breaks. And let's manually do set error to be something went wrong, like this. And what we have to do now is actually render the errors. So let's import our form error from .form error or components. I think it's just components, like that. And let's do the same thing for form success from form success. Great. And now let's go ahead and render those. So here at the bottom, below the bootloader, let's add form success to have a message of success, and form error to have a message of error. And there we go. You can see how it says the token has expired, right? So you should get this message if you use the old verification token. You can see I sent this 17 hours ago. So obviously it has expired by now. But you can see how I'm still showing the loading indicator even though I got an error. And here's another thing you can test. Inside of your URL, remove the token completely. And now you're going to get an error missing token, right? So choose one error at least for you to have here. And let's go ahead and modify this now. So we are only going to show the bootloader if there is no success and if there is no error. So if it's a completely empty slate, there we go. So you can see how now the loader no longer shows, but if I refresh, it will only show during the actual server action call that we are doing right here, new verification. So on the use effect, the moment the component mounts, we call onSubmit, which then in return calls the new verification if it has a token inside of search params here. Great. And now what I want to do is I want to also modify this form errors and form success, but let's go ahead and try and create an actual new token. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and go inside of my Prisma Studio, and this is the email I can send my emails to. So confirm inside of your resend that you're using the email where you can send the emails to. And let me just close everything I don't need here. So go inside of your app and try to log in again. Right, and this should send you a new email, or you can clear your database and create a new account with this email. And there we go, confirmation email sent. So now I should be getting a new email. There we go. So when I click here, let's see if that's going to work. Email verified, and then we have an error, token does not exist, right? So that's the thing that I was telling you about. That's because our use effect fires twice, right? So on the second iteration, it's looking at an already confirmed token, which we removed from the database. But still, I kind of want to cover this case, just in case, you know, it can happen in production, even though I don't think this can happen in production because it won't fire twice. But we're going to do our best to cover that as well. And here's a fun thing. Let me just check if I am now running my Prisma Studio. I think I shut it down. So let me open it again, npx Prisma Studio. So in here, if I look at my user, and let's find it by this email, so tutorial mailing, and look at this. We have officially verified our email. which means that if I try and log in again, I will be allowed to log in. Let's see, and there we go. I am officially confirmed and I can log in inside of my account. Perfect. So let's just try one more time to resolve that little bug that we have. So I'm gonna do the following. I'm gonna go inside of my Prisma Studio and let me just remove all the other users. So I just wanna focus on the one where I can send my emails to, this one. And what I'm gonna do, let me just refresh this again. There we go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove my email verified property like this, leave it at null and click Save Change, or simply remove it completely and just, register again if that's easier. And now if I go ahead and try and log in again, I will be sent a new verification email. But before we click on it and verify our email again, let's try and protect our little app here from that happening again. So the first thing I'm going to do is go inside of the onSubmit here. And what I'm going to do is, if we already have a success message or if we already have an error message, simply break the function, right? So then we also have to add those to the dependency array. So let's add success and error here. And let's go ahead inside of here. And let's only show the error if we never had success in the first place, like this. And I think that this should improve the behavior a bit. So I cannot log in, but I got a new email here. There we go, confirm your email. And let's see if this will be stuck at email verified. Oh, so it's still showing token does not exist. But as I said, yeah, I think there's kind of no way around this at the moment. You can play around if you want to, but as I'm saying, this only happens because you're calling use effect twice, right? And I believe that it won't even listen to this logic because it's in some special React state where it's being called twice with the exact same values. I don't think it even considers this new values being changed. So I think that's why this is happening. But as I said, in production, we're going to test it, of course, later. I think this will not happen at all. And you're just going to see a message saying email verified. So if I try this again, what was my email? Tutorial mailing, Gmail. And if I log in again, I should be able to log in. There we go. Perfect. So we successfully verified our email. If I refresh here, I'm going to get email verified to the new date. Perfect. So let's just recap our entire flow. When the user registers using the register server action, we generate a new verification token using the email they used to register. Then we send the email to that. We send the verification token to that email. Inside of the verification, inside of the email, we are using a route called Auth new verification, which we added to the public routes. Then inside of our app, Auth, we have that new verification page, which renders the new verification form, located in components Auth verification form. Inside of here, we use the search params to search for the token, which was appended inside of our mail function, send verification email. So the second argument was token, and in here we append that token. So we check if we can find that token in the URL. If on the onSubmit, which fires automatically in the use effect the moment the component loads, is missing, we return an error, token is missing. Otherwise, we call the new verification server action, or, in your case, this can be an API route as well. It really doesn't matter. Instead of new verification, we send that token from the URL. We search the token using the function getVerificationToken by token, which we defined in here. So we use the find unique where token matches the token. If we cannot find the token in our database, we return an error. Token does not exist. Second thing we do is we check if an hour has passed from the creation of the token. If an hour has passed, we return token has expired. Otherwise, if it has not expired, we check for the user which this token was intended for using the email. So get user by email. If the user doesn't exist, which, it can happen, there are edge cases. In that case, we throw an error. The email for this token, which you're trying to verify, does not exist. There's nothing we can do here. Otherwise, if we can find the user, we update the user using that user's ID. We change the email verified to be the new date, meaning today I verified this. And we also modify the email to be whatever was stored in the verification token, because remember, this exact logic is going to be later reused when we add the settings page to change to a new email. So that's why we also have to update email in here and not in the settings, because we don't want to immediately change the user's email. Otherwise, they could use anyone's email for that, right? That's not good. We have to ensure that they can verify the email that they are trying to change. And last thing we do is we remove the old verification token. No need to store that inside of our database anymore. And we return a success message, email verified. And all of that is reflected inside of this dot. Then we also have an additional catch in case something goes wrong, which is out of our control here. And we have a little loader here. We have a success and we have an error. And yeah, we have that little bug, which, as I say, I'm pretty confident it only happens in development because of React strict mode. You can see that it's completely ignoring the fact that we already set a success message there. But yeah, I tried to fix it, but you can see that it's not working. We're going to test that again in production as well. Great job. What we're going to do next is a functionality to reset our password. So we currently don't have that little question here. So we're going to add a little question, forgot your password. And then we're going to do a very similar logic. We're going to send user an email and we're going to allow them to add a new password if they have the correct token inside of their URL. So let's go ahead and create the forgot password functionality. So for that, I want to go back inside of my components, Auth login form right here. And in here, we have to find our password input. So this one right here, which has the name password, and the input, which has the type password. And outside of form control here, we're going to add a button component, which we already have imported inside of components UI button. And now inside of here, let's go ahead and add a link component, which we can import from next/link. So make sure that you add this import. I'm going to move it up here with the other imports like that. And now let's go ahead and give this link an href of /auth/reset. And then let's go ahead and write forgot password here. And let's go ahead and give this button a size of small. Let's go ahead and give it a variant of link. And let's give it as child option so it properly uses the link inside. And let's also give it a class name of px0 so it is aligned with the input here. And let's also give it font normal so it's not bold like that. And now when the user tries to click here, nothing will happen because they are immediately redirected back to the login page. So what we have to do is we have to add /auth/reset inside of our routes. So let's find the routes.ts here, and we're going to add them to the auth routes. So go ahead and add /auth/reset to the auth routes array. And now if I click forgot password, I should be redirected. Let me go ahead and try this again. There we go. So refresh your page and you should be redirected to a 404 page and your URL should be /auth/reset. So now let's go ahead and let's create that page. So I'm going to go inside of my app folder Auth and let's create a new folder called reset. And inside a page.tsx with a default export of reset page and a div reset page. And there we go. We now no longer have that error and we can click on forgot password here, which redirects us to here. Perfect. So now obviously instead of this div, we're going to create a reset form like that. And we can reuse a lot of elements from our login form. So I want to copy that one. So let me close everything and we will remember that we have that error inside of our reset page. Let's go inside of components, Auth, and let's copy the login form in the Auth. And let's rename it to reset form, like this. Make sure that you are inside of reset form. So confirm right here that your reset form is open. First things first, let's go ahead and rename this to reset form, like this. And then let's go ahead and let's change the card wrapper here to asks us, forgot your password. the back button label, let's change that to go back to login, and the back button href is gonna go back to login like this. And now we can go back inside of the app function, app folder, Auth, reset, and we can import the reset form from components Auth reset form. Just make sure that you have renamed the export constant to reset form here, and it should look exactly the same as the login functionality. So now we're gonna go ahead and modify it. So let's go ahead and let's start by hiding socials, right? So I'm gonna remove the show social prop, and there we go. That's gonna remove the socials because that's not something we wanna show here. Now what I wanna do is I wanna remove this use search params. So we're no longer going to need that error. So remove the use search params, and now we have an error here. So remove this URL error constant. Now we have to go down and find the form error and remove the usage of URL error like that. And now we can also remove the imports we no longer need, which is use search params. So let's go ahead and remove that as well. Great, and now the only thing we have to have for our inputs is the email. So the user will enter the email for the account they forgot the password for. So we can find the actual password form field and completely remove that. So find the end of the self-closing tag like this and simply remove it. So you should only have the email field inside like this. Great. Let's change the login button to write send reset email here. Like this. There we go. So this is already looking a lot better. Perfect. So what I want to go now is I want to go back inside of my schemas. So let's go inside of the schemas folder, index.ts right here. And let's copy and paste an existing schema like login schema here. And let's just add an email and call this reset schema. So just an email with a message email is required like that. Now let's go back inside of reset form, inside of components Auth the reset form, and let's go ahead and we can remove this link. It seems we no longer need that, and let's import reset schema from schemas here. So now we can fix all the errors where we are using the login schema. So this is going to be reset schema, this is going to be reset schema, and this is going to be reset schema. And as you can see, we have an error for the password field in the default values because we don't need it for this one right here. And obviously we have some issues with our onSubmit function because it's calling the login server action. We're not going to use that server action. We're going to call the other one. Perfect. So for now, what we can do is comment this out, and instead let's console log our values here. And let's try this out. So I'm going to open inspect element and I'm going to send this to tutorialmailing@gmail.com. So we're going to have to use that email from resend, right? Because we're going to be sending some emails now. And there we go. When I click submit, inside of my onSubmit, I have the proper values of my email here and nothing else. Perfect. And let's try back to login. Forgot password. There we go. Both are working. Perfect. So what we have to do now is we have to, well, you can bring this back and we have to create an equivalent action to actually reset the password. So let's go inside of our actions and let's create a new action, reset.ts. Remember to mark it as use server. And let's go ahead and import reset schema from our schemas. Let's go ahead and let's import get user by email from data user. And let's go ahead and import everything as Z from Zod, so we can do server-side validation from here as well. Great. And now export const reset function to accept the, let's make it asynchronous value, which accepts the values, which are a type of z.infer, type of reset schema. And then inside, let's validate our fields. So validated fields are reset schema, save parse, and pass in the values which will come from the props. If we don't get a success message, so if exclamation point validated fields dot success, return an error, invalid email. So server-side validation in case they bypass the front-end side validation. And then we can safely extract the email from validated fields .data. And now let's find the existing user using await get user by email, which we imported, and pass in the email. So make sure that you imported get user by email from data user. And if there is no existing user, let's go ahead and return an error, which is very simply going to say email not found, like that. Otherwise, we can return a success message, reset email sent. Obviously, it's not here yet, so we're gonna add a little to-do, generate token, and send email. There we go. So now we have our reset function. So we can go back inside of components Auth and find the reset form here. Let's find where we import the login action, and this time let's use the reset action. So import reset from actions reset. And let's use the reset and send the values, and there we go. No more errors inside of our component. So let's try this out by adding a random email which doesn't exist inside of our database, and that should throw an error that the user, well, the email is not found, so we cannot reset a password for this one. But if I try and use my existing password here, I should get a success message, reset email sent, like this. Great. So what we have to do now is we have to visit our schema Prisma, and we have to create our password reset token. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go inside of Prisma, schema.prisma, and let's add a model password reset token. It's going to have an ID, which is a type of string, @ID, and the default value of CUID. Let's give it an email of string. Let's give it a token of string and a unique value. And let's go ahead and give it an expires of date time and a unique combination of email and token, like that. So very similar to our verification token. It has an ID, it has an email, token, expires, and unique. Yeah, and don't reuse the verification token, right? If you're thinking, oh, we could have just reused it, it's simply safer to keep tokens separate, right? Security-wise, it's better that you have an exact model you can look up and know this is for password reset, this is for email verification, even if they're exactly the same. So what we have to do now is we have to create utils to fetch these from the database. But before we can do that, we actually have to shut down our application. So let's shut down Prisma Studio. Let's go ahead and let's shut down npm run dev. Let's do npx prisma generate. So we add those new fields to node modules, and npx prisma database push. So we add them to our Neon database right here. Once that is finished, we can go ahead and run npm run dev again, refresh your localhost to ensure nothing breaks. And now let's close the Prisma schema. Let's go inside of the data folder and create a new file, password reset token.ts. Let's go ahead and import the database from /lib database. Let's export const get password reset token by token to be an asynchronous function which accepts the token, which is a string. Inside of here, open a try and catch block. In the catch, we're simply going to return null. And in here, let's get the password token to be await database.password reset token, which we just created, find unique, and where matches the token, like that. If you're getting an error for db.password reset token, it can mean two things. You didn't run npx prisma generate, or in your schema, you didn't name the model correctly, or if you did both, then go ahead and shut down Visual Studio Code and open it up again, or use Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P and type in reload window right here, and that is the equivalent of shutting down your Visual Studio Code and starting it again. And in here, let's just return the password reset token. Let's call this properly password reset token, like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and copy and paste this. And this one will be named get password reset token by email, and it's going to accept the email prop, and it's going to use find first to get the matching email and everything else can stay exactly the same. Great. So now what we have to do is we have to go back inside of our tokens lib. So let's go inside of lib tokens. So we have generate verification token. Now let's go ahead and first let's import get password reset token by email from data password reset token, which we just created. And let's go ahead and write the function for this. So export const generate password reset token to be an asynchronous function which accepts the email, which will be passed from this page right here using our server action. And then let's go ahead and generate the token using UUID v4. So the same thing we are doing above. You can copy and paste the expires from the one above, so it will expire in 1 hour. And let's get the existing token using await get password reset token by email and passing the email from the prop like that. If we have the existing token, in that case, let's await database.reset password reset token dot delete, and let's delete the one which has a matching ID of the existing token dot ID, which we just found using the email that was sent, meaning that the user already has a password reset token, but they are requesting a new one. And finally, let's create a password reset token here using await database password reset token dot create. Let's give it a data of email, token, and expires. So we have all the necessary information, and simply return password reset token like that. Perfect. So now we have the ability to fetch the password reset token and the ability to generate a password reset token, which is carefully going to look if we already have an existing one, so we remove it on time. And the last thing we have to do is we have to revisit our mail library. So in the lib, let's go to mail here, and it's going to be very similar. So, well, let's write it again just to ensure our knowledge here. So export const send password reset email is going to be an asynchronous function which accepts the email, which is a type of string, and a token, which is a type of string. And in here, let's write the reset link to be http localhost 3000 /auth /new password. So this is a new route which we're gonna have to create later, of course. And the same thing, we pass in the token and stringify the token like that. And then await resend emails send like this from onboarding at resend.dev to the email subject. The subject is going to be reset your password, and HTML we can copy from below. So click here, and instead of confirm your email, it's going to be to reset your password. So click here, and instead of confirm link, it's going to be reset link, and instead of the confirm email, it's going to be to reset password. Like that. There we go. So we have everything we need. Make sure you don't have any typos. Make sure that this exactly matches what you've been sending before. Later, when we do deployment, we can change this to go from whatever website or domain you want in production. And make sure that when you're testing this, you are sending this to that email which you have in resend. Great. So now we can finally go back inside of our reset server action. So actions reset here. And let's go ahead and let's import send password reset email from libmail and generate password reset token from libtokens. And in here we have a little to do which we wrote. So let's go ahead and write const password reset token is await generate password reset token using the email which was entered in the form, and then await send password reset email. And in here let's use password reset token dot email as the first argument and password reset token as the second argument. And whenever you do this, always double check that the first parameter is actually an email and the second one is a token, so you don't have any unexpected bugs. And I believe this should already be working. So make sure that you enter the email which you can use from recent right here. Let me copy this and go inside of this button which we have right here, forgot password. Make sure that your app is running. Let's send this right here and let's click send reset email, and that should actually be sending me an email now. So let's just wait a second. There we go, reset email sent. And let's look at my inbox here. There we go. Reset your password. Obviously, if I click here, it's just going to bring me back to login because we have to add that page. And here's one more thing that we can check. So I think my Prisma is not running. So let's go ahead and run our npx Prisma Studio. And you can now see that we also have a password reset token, which was generated and which was sent to that email. So this is the token that is going to be inside of our URL being sent to this email. Perfect. So we just finished the first step, which was sending the email for a new password. The next step will be to create this page, which we defined inside of libmail, called Auth new password. And in here is going to be a very simple form, which is going to, take in the new password that the user wants and also use this token to confirm that they have permissions to change their password. Great job. So the first thing we have to do is we have to enable this link, click here to reset password. Right now it redirects us back to login. So let's go ahead inside of our routes.ts file right here. And inside of our auth routes, we have to add that new link. So let's add /auth/new-password like that. So that's only going to be available for logged out users because logged in users will have the settings to change their password. So it's different from this new verification where it can be used both by logged in and logged out users. That's why this is in public route. So it can be accessed if the user is already logged in. Great. So just confirm that this /auth new password is exactly the same as you're sending inside of libmail right here. So send password reset email should use /auth/new password and then append a token query here. So make sure that this exactly matches what you just wrote inside of this new auth routes. And then if you click inside of your mail here, it should lead you to a 404 page, but it should not redirect you. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's go inside of the app folder Auth and let's create a new folder, new password. Then inside, create a new file, page.tsx, and export default new password page and a div new password. And there we go. We now have a new password page. Perfect. So obviously, as always, we're now going to go ahead and change this to use the new password form. And now let's go ahead and let's copy the existing, which one should we use? How about we copy inside of components Auth? Let's copy the reset form. I believe that one is the simplest. So copy the reset form, paste it inside of Auth, rename the copy to new password form. Make sure that you are inside new password form so you can close the other one. So confirm you are inside new password form. And in here, go ahead and rename this to new password form like that. And then you can go back inside of app Auth new password where you have this error, and let's import new password form from components new password form, and it will look exactly the same as the one we just created for the resetting of the password. So now what we have to do is we have to go ahead and modify it. So first thing that I want to do is go inside of my schemas right here in the index. Let's copy this schema and let's rename it to new password schema. And let's change this to be a password. And let's go ahead and give this a value of minimum of 6. And then the message will be minimum of 6 characters required, or what did we write before? Minimum 6 characters required. All right, exactly that. So just the password field for the new password schema like that. Now let's go back into the new password form and let's import, instead of reset schema, new password schema. So we're gonna get errors wherever we are using the old one. So in here, and in here, let's replace that with new password schema. And now we have an error for the default values. So that should be the password, of course. And inside of the on submit, yes, we have an error. We're gonna fix that later. So now what I want to do is I want to modify the card wrapper here. So the header label instead is going to be enter a new password. And this can stay the same, back to login. And we don't need to show socials here either. Inside of the form field, let's change the name for this one to be password. Let's give this a form label to be password as well. And let's go ahead and change the type to be password. And the placeholder, let's just give it 5 stars, actually 6 stars like that. And let's change the submit button to say reset password. Like this. There we go. What we have to do now is we have to fetch the token from our URL. So inside of your URL, you should have the token if you clicked here from the reset password. So your token should be appended just like it was for the verification. If it's not, go ahead and double check inside of your mail that you are sending send password reset email with the token appended, and confirm in the reset action when you await send password reset token that you do a proper order of email and token. If you want to, you can also add a console log of the password reset token to see if something is going wrong inside of it, and then debug from there. Great, so let's go ahead and let's import use search params from next navigation like that. And let's go ahead and add it here. So const search params is use search params like this, and then we can extract the token to be search params.get token. And we already know why it's token is because it's inside of our URL. So just double check that you didn't misspell that. Inside of your URL, it should be token like this. Great. So now we have our token here. And now what we have to do is we have to create a new server action to handle this. So let's go inside of actions, new one, new password.ts, like that. Mark it as use server. And let's go ahead and export const new password to be an asynchronous function which accepts the values, which are a type of import everything as z from Zod. So we need that. And let's import new password schema from schemas. So then we can write values is a type of z.infer type of new password schema. And let me just not misspell type of. And we're also going to pass the token from the URL, which can be string or null like that. And immediately, if we don't have a token, let's go ahead and return an error, missing token, like this. Great. Now we can use this new password in place of our new password form. So instead of components out, we have a new password form here. And instead of using reset action, let's use new password import, and let's import new password. And then we can replace the onSubmit function to use the new password. And besides sending values, as you can see, it also accepts the token. So add a comma here and pass in the token, which we extract right here from the search params like this. Perfect. And we're going to fix this in a second. So now I want to go ahead back inside of the new password here. And let's go ahead and let's validate our fields. So const validated fields is going to be new password schema.save parse, pass in the values. If we didn't get a success from validated fields, so just make sure you put an exclamation point here. Let's go ahead and return an error.